Here we go, first fish of the day, finally. Feels like a good one. First fish of the day. Nice little brownie. So what up guys, today we're out at the lake and we're going to be doing my favorite type of fly fishing, which is called Loch Style fly fishing. So when I say Loch Style fly fishing, all I'm really talking about is fly fishing in a boat with the wind at my back. That's basically the main idea of it. So I started fly fishing when I was 8 years old. I grew up in the White Mountains, and for my whole life I fished lakes, but whenever I fished lakes from the boat, I was either anchored up or trolling. I didn't discover Loch Style until 6 years ago at a fly fishing comp in Dulce, New Mexico. Was the first time I started fly fishing Loch Style, and have been trying to get better at it ever since. One of the cool things about Loch Style is that you're pretty active and you're more in control of whether or not you catch fish or not compared to trolling. And with trolling you're always driving over the fish, but with Loch Style fly fishing you're casting to the fish because the wind's at your back. So this is my drogue for my boat. I have it attached to the back of the boat there, but this is what it is. It's a little drift sock, and what the drogue does, it slows down your drift out in the lake, so it'll catch, and it's basically like a water parachute. It'll catch water in there and it'll slow you down enough to be able to fish. Alright, so one thing you have to keep in mind is that you're always moving towards your fly. Here we go, first fish of the day, finally. Feels like a good one. Coming right at me. Ooh, it's a nice brown. Yeah. Sweet. Nice looking brown. Start the day with. One of the variables you have to keep in mind is wind speed, the depth you want to be fishing, because the wind speed kind of will dictate the type of line you use. If the fish are sitting deeper and it's not so windy, you can get away with like maybe a type 3 or even a type 5. But if it's super windy and the fish are sitting, even if you're super windy and the fish are sitting pretty high up in a water column, you're still gonna throw on like a type 7. And like today I'm going to be mainly pulling buggers, and if you're just pulling buggers, the whole idea what will catch you fish is by keeping the line in the feeding zone as long as possible. And that's what I have with different types of fly lines. Most important of Loch Style fly fishing are the fly lines. They cover the different depths, so these are the few lines I brought out to the lake today, plus the 7 I have on. So when I'm out there in the lake, that's all I'm doing, is I'm trying to find a different line that'll keep my flies in the feeding zone as long as possible, and also trying to find out what the fish are feeding. And then since I'm moving, I'm trying to find fish. One of the hard parts with Loch Style fly fishing though is that when you do find the fish, you have to paddle back around, try not to disturb fish, and then set up your drift and then go back through there. Sorry guys, we're back at the top. Went through here earlier, caught a few fish, dropped a few, so moved when I drifted all the way down, but now I'm drifting all the way back there again. So that's one of the disadvantages of it, I guess, is that you're always kind of moving back through. And it's also a lot more, for me it's a lot more fun, it's a lot more active. Even on tough days when you're just pulling buggers, you're always moving, you're always checking out new ground. It's a pretty active method of fly fishing. You're not just stuck in one spot anchored up, or you're not just sitting there with your arm out trolling. So if you're new to Loch Style fly fishing, especially you live in the White Mountains or wherever you fish and you have a lot of little lakes, this is a pretty cool method to try. So for some reason it's not as big here in the States as it is in other countries, but it's a pretty cool method. Another thing that's cool about fishing with the wind on your back, you can always cast a lot further. And if you're fishing in a boat, all you need is you can buy a drogue. I bought my drogue for like 27 bucks on Amazon, and I think for the size it's a little bit bigger, it was about 40 bucks, so it's not too expensive. Just keep in mind that you're going towards your flies, so if you have to pull your flies faster than the boat is drifting to be able to get them to move. If not, they're just sitting there, so keep that in mind. So we're gonna get started and hopefully we can get some fish today in the boat fishing Loch Style. So for today's session I'm starting out on a type 3 line. This is my first, this is a little thin mint bugger I'm starting out with. Up top, this is a little sunburst blob that I'm starting with up top. And then on my point fly is just a black, basic black woolly bugger. Starting on a type 3, I'm on a 7-weight rod. If you saw, I put on a blob. I had a big bright blob as my top dropper fly. And certain times of the year, the blob is a good pattern to have on because it's a good pattern to have on because it looks like an egg and fish will eat it as an egg, I think. But like this time of the year, the fish in this area, there's not a lot of fish that are eating eggs. I don't think anyway, but what it mainly is doing for me is it's more of an attractor pattern. It's bright, it's different, it's pretty crazy looking. But if a fish sees it, he'll just look at it and then he'll see my other 2 flies. So basically all that blob is doing right now, it's in a way I'm kind of just sacrificing it to get a fish to look at my flies, and then hoping that when it sees a blob, it'll see my flies and it'll take one of the other flies, not necessarily take the blob. I'm not expecting to get a bunch of eats off the blob today. If I do, it'll be cool, but I'm not really expecting it. So that's, if you guys are wondering why I have that big, bright, ugly fly on, it's just an attractor pattern to try to get the fish to see my flies. Here we go. Feels like a good one again. Got that on the pause right there. I stopped and boom, he hit. It's another nice brown. A little bit bigger than the last one. Yeah. Here we go, another one. As soon as the fly hit the water, I got a hit. Looks like it's another brown. Finding a little pot, nice little pot of browns right here. The nice little guy. Sweet. So it's been about an hour and a half and no fish, and then past few minutes has been almost every cast I've been getting a bite, getting a fish. So gonna keep working this bank and see how it goes. Here we go, another one. Almost in the same area that I caught the last few. It's a rainbow this time. First rainbow of the day. Nice little chunky rainbow. Here we go. So I put on a bobber and it was fishing the same way I was fishing last week, just drifting and letting it sit, and I got one on. And I think this is going to be also the last fish of the day. So sorry guys, I'm going to call it a day here. Overall, it was a pretty tough day. I ended the day with about 4 fish and no luck. I didn't even get a take until I got here to this little spot right here by there's a big red rock standing out right there, but right there I got my first take. I caught the fish just pulling pretty fast on a type 7, and I had a bunch of takes. I think I ended up with 3 on that drift, but I had a few drops, so there was a lot of fish in that area. And then I drifted all the way down there. There's a log sticking out. I drifted down to the log, and then I floated all the way back, and ended up drifting through there 3 more times, and then picked up this last rainbow. But overall, it was a really tough day. But I did catch some fish, and it was good to be out on a boat. So thanks for watching, and subscribe.